You say I make you nervous, a tragedy, I'm a beautiful disaster, a reckoning, you wonder how I got this way.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to my channel. I'm Sunshinery. Make sure to subscribe and like this video.
And tame, oh, some things never change, never change. Oh. You think I would...
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to my channel. So we are here for another Rachel Goes Rogue podcast, chapter number 7. What's really going on here? She is joined by a board-certified clinical counselor and trauma specialist, Miss Susan Zinn, and they're going to talk about Rachel's journey, where she continues to begin to understand herself, and, as she puts it, this cast of characters' behavior on a deeper level. So guys, let's get right into it. But first, make sure to like this video and subscribe to my channel, and then go back and hit notification to all so you can get notified every time I post a video or go live. All right, let's listen.
Hey guys, it's Rachel Leviss. We are back with another episode of Rachel Goes Rogue. Today, I'm super excited because I have a guest here who is going to give a little bit more insight on this Karpman triangle. I have Susan Zinn, who is a trauma therapist. Welcome, Susan.
Hi, Rachel. Thanks so much for having me on the podcast.
Yes, thank you for joining me.
Of course.
Are you familiar with Vanderpump Rules? Are you all caught up with watching the premiere?
I am. I really enjoyed watching it, and also just hearing all your insights of just your feelings and thoughts. And really just thank you so much for also really raising the awareness about mental health and how, when we're talking about it, I know we're getting a little further into the drama triangles that exist in relationship dynamics, but just that impact that can have on people's mental health. And I think that the premiere showed that so much of just that drain and really the anxiety. And even some of the people sort of discussing even sort of feeling traumatic, that it was traumatic for them, including yourself. And all the work that you've done at Meadows has been really to illustrate the impact of sort of when these sort of dangerous dynamics can happen that are so unhealthy, and group dynamics of what that can really do to people's mental health.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I am glad to hear that the therapist did her homework, per se, and has watched Vanderpump Rules. I don't know how much she has watched. She did say she watched the premiere episode, which is good, and she acknowledged that there were a lot of trauma because of what happened. Now, I'm not sure if she knows everything, and it's going to be interesting to see just how much this therapist knows. And I'm interested to see what she is going to address, and if she is going to address that, hey, Rachel, Ariana has trauma from this, and it is because of your actions. That is what I'm hoping to see, but let's just see what happens.
Amazing. Okay, so I wanted to get deeper into that drama triangle. And could you tell us a little bit about each point of this triangle and how we get from one point to another?
Yeah, I think the most important thing is to really understand that the drama triangle is a human survival tactic in high conflict group dynamics. So it was created by Stephen Karpman. So also that's why it's often referred to as the Karpman triangle, to explain the dysfunctional social interactions and power games that exist in group dynamics that involve the role of the victim, rescuer, and perpetrator or offender, and where one or more person can take multiple roles in those group dynamics. So the reason why this Karpman model is so important to discuss too is because as human beings, we have two fundamental needs. We have the need to belong, and we have the need to feel loved. And so in high conflict situations where there's triangulation, can actually be an unconscious survival tactic used to needing to be right, being self-righteous, or needing approval from others, and not really taking any responsibilities for actions or feelings. And instead, what that starts to create is codependency within group dynamics. And there's not self-reliance or regulation in the group. And that was really what happened last season for the group. So what that looks like, and what I think everyone can relate to, is that the victim takes on the poor me, and, oh, I didn't do anything wrong, and I need help and support. And there's a real helpless aspect to it. And then the perpetrator or offender is more about the blaming and criticizing the victim, rarely admitting that they were wrong. So there's a lot of gaslighting and confusion and even bullying. And then the rescuer, and sometimes it's also called the hero, feels guilty that they didn't step in and help to protect the victim. So later there's an overcorrection where they need to show everyone in the group dynamic that they were doing the right thing and they were helping the victim to step in their power in some way. But really what ends up happening is that the victim doesn't have any ability to have agency and control, that they're being overpowered by these sort of two different aspects. And there is an unwillingness and an unawareness of how these each roles are sort of existing within the group dynamic.
So knowing that the therapist was going to talk about this, I did look into this a little bit myself. And I do want to read what Karpman's theory was for why he created this triangle. So he used this triangle to map conflicted or drama-intense relationship transactions. The Karpman drama triangle models the connection between personal responsibility and power in conflicts, and the destruction and shifting roles people play. He defined 3 roles in the conflict: the perpetrator, the rescuer, and the victim. Karpman placed those 3 roles on a triangle and referred to them as being the 3 aspects or faces of drama. Now here's where it gets a little bit more detailed. The victim. The victim in this model is not intended to represent an actual victim, but rather someone feeling or acting like one. The victim seeks to convince themselves and others that they cannot do anything, nothing can be done, all attempts are futile. And one payoff of this stance is avoiding real change or acknowledgement of their feelings, which may bring anxiety and risk while feeling they are doing all they can to escape it. As such, the victim stance is poor me. The victim feels perpetrated, oppressed, helpless, powerless, hopeless, ashamed, and seems unable to make decisions, solve problems, take pleasure in life, or achieve insight. The victim will remain with a perpetrator, or if not being perpetrated, will set someone else up in the role of perpetrator. I know that was a little confusing. They will also seek help, creating one or more rescuers to save the day, who will in reality perpetrate the victim's negative feelings and leave the situation broadly unchanged. So necessarily being the victim is not always a good thing. Now, the rescuer's line is, "Let me help you," a classic enabler. The rescuer feels guilty if they do not go to the rescue and ultimately become angry and become a perpetrator, as they help fails to achieve change. Yet their rescuing has negative effects. It keeps the victim dependent. It doesn't allow the victim permission to fail and experience the consequences of their choices. The rewards derived from the rescue role are that the focus is taken away from the rescuer, who can also feel good for having tried and justified in their negative feelings to the other actors upon failing. When they focus their energy on someone else, it enables them to ignore their own anxiety and troubles. The rescuer role is also prevalent because their actual primary interest is really an avoidance of their own problems disguised as concern for the victim's needs. And lastly, the perpetrator, aka the villain. The perpetrator insists it's all your fault. The perpetrator is controlling, blaming, critical, oppressive, angry, rigid, and superior. But if blamed in turn, the perpetrator may become defensive and may switch roles to become a victim if attacked forcefully by the rescuer and or victim, in which case the victim may also switch roles to become a perpetrator. I hate to say it, but none of these roles are anything that anyone really wants to be. Like, I get you want to rescue someone and help them, but they're right. Then you are suppressing maybe what's going on in your life and avoiding your own problems. So let's just learn a little bit more about this from the therapist. I just wanted to explain that to you guys so we have a better understanding ourselves.
Totally. Yeah. When I was in this group dynamic, I had no awareness of what was going on. And I didn't really know that there was terminology to put on the different roles that we were all playing in this dysfunctional friend group. And so I'm so happy that we can talk about it now. And I think it's so important to talk about it early on as we go into this season, because this drama triangle can be applied to pretty much any movie or any TV show that you watch. It is what drives a storyline. It's what creates content for people to relate to, I guess. And it's like entertaining in a way. So I just wanted to put this on the forefront so that the viewers watching Vanderpump Rules can begin to point out each person in the different role of this drama triangle and gain more of that clarity of like what's actually going on here.
I do understand this triangle, and I do understand that with drama, people are intrigued. It's like a dumpster fire. You want to look away, but you also want to see what happens. And I get that a lot of TV shows and movies are based off of this triangle. Even when you look at the information, he was looking at different TV shows, movies, and things like that to make this triangle and explain it in his theory. I just don't necessarily think if it's for every single thing that happens on this show and every single thing that these people are going through. I also think a lot of us forget that though it is a reality TV show, this is also these people's real life, and they are affected by what happens even on this show. Let me know what you guys think down below.
I think that's so important because I think that oftentimes where relationship dynamics can be really confusing for people to try to understand, or to your point, they can be really exciting or dramatic for people to watch because they can't believe that people are sort of existing in this way. But this is not an uncommon dynamic that can happen in group dynamics. And that's why it is so important too. You just saw it and lived it in sort of an extreme version than and I think that's what made it so relatable to so many people, is that they could relate to the fact at one point that maybe they played the role of victim or offender or rescuer in some capacity. And the bottom line underneath all of this is a lack of understanding of self and also a lack of self-regulation. So given how toxic and stressful and overwhelming the dynamic that was happening within this group made it very difficult for people to really have a lot of agency to kind of sit back. And as you've talked about earlier, being the observer of what really happened, for people to process their feelings, to be able to step back in and have real conversations. And instead, everyone was too in their feelings and too rigid to really allow for there to be any sort of movement. And so we just kind of kept seeing this sort of victim, offender, rescuer kind of happen within the friend dynamic.
Mm-hmm. And we'll continue to see that throughout.
But what this lady is forgetting, the only other time they were all able to sit down and talk about this was during the reunion. It was a heightened state. It was 3 weeks after everybody found out. No one really understood everything that was going on at that point, and no one wanted to talk. Everyone's emotions were very high, and it takes time. And I don't think that there are some people at this moment that want to sit down and discuss what really went down. And it gets to the point where I know Ariana does not want to be a victim. She wants to be a survivor, and I believe she's in a survivor mode where it happened, it's over and done with, she's moved on, she's doing bigger and better things with her life. There's no need to rehash what happened, to find out all the details of what really went on behind her back. At this point, it's said, it's over with, it's done, she moved on. And I think a lot of other people need to move on as well. Though I understand people are hurt because they were friends with both of them and they also feel lied to. And it's a struggle for sure. And like what we hope to see in season 11 is that, Sandoval and Scheana, when they go to this retreat, will be able to have a conversation, which they haven't done since the reunion. And hopefully that conversation is productive, where they both express how they are feeling.
I'm loving everything that you're giving us so far, because it really is this new lens to view reality TV through. Because once we're aware of the dynamics that are going on through these relationships, and how that perpetuates a story and entertainment for the viewers, we can start to understand, like, okay, I can see how some of the people involved on the show know what their job is, and they kind of play into that for the purpose of providing entertainment. But then also, as some of the cast are playing into this drama, there's other casts that are affected by it and are on the receiving end of that. And sometimes the emotions become so powerful that you're acting out of impulse and not really thinking things through. And I feel like that's the manipulation part of reality TV.
I do believe that some people think about their storylines and what they might be, but I also don't think that everyone is like that at all. And I know they are just living their lives and taking each moment as it comes, and you can't plan everything like that, especially like a 7-month affair. I don't think that like Tom planned this or even thought this out until it happened and they were in it and it was a fucked up thing. And that's when he started to maybe plan how it might go and what they might have to do to play it off, or how he would end it with Ariana, then get with Rachel. I think Rachel is making it seem like all things are planned out, but that's just not real life, and that's not how reality TV works either. And it's like if you're going to plan a wedding and you plan this wedding from start to finish with everything planned, nothing is going to go like it's planned. Something will happen that will affect it and throw things off. And I think she's really thinking that people manipulate the storylines on the show, when that's not how I see it at all. And yes, a lot of people on the show react based off emotions and not thinking things through. But how is that manipulation part of reality TV? That is what I don't get. A lot of people in real life will react based off emotion, and they're not trying to manipulate a situation because they are reacting that way. So that's what I just don't understand what she's trying to say here with this.
I think you're speaking so much to when people are feeling like they're not having agency or control, and when they're wanting to feel part of something. So for them to feel outside of the group, we start to go into fight, flight, or freeze. We really get a trauma response. So whether it's actually something that is a catastrophic event, or it's something small like a group dynamic, or you feel like it should be something small like a group dynamic, it feels the same in the body. And so when you're in it and you're sort of in an experience where you're being filmed and you're being followed around in this group situation where you all have the same experience, and then to be pushed outside of it, or to be ganged up on with one person from the group, or be separated in some way or some capacity, it's the same as actually feeling like you're in Nepal in the sub-Saharan region of Africa and you've got lions circling around you. You've got your blood flowing to your heart, it's pumping, you're feeling a stress response, you're in a high conflict sort of situation of feeling so unsafe. And so as a result of that, in these situations, that's what really mimics for people, where you see them in such distressed or overwhelmed over things that may not be in a different situation when they didn't have cameras on, or a group dynamic that was sort of formed in this capacity feels so stressful. They may have had resources or other people in their community or family and friends to kind of support them through that process. But in this sort of insular way, where this is the only, you either belong to this group or you're sort of pushed out, can feel so overwhelming. And that's what you're really seeing play out. And I'm so glad you brought that up, because I think that that oftentimes what makes people appear to be unstable or unwell or have mental health issues or high anxiety or panic. But it really is sort of that dynamic that's running that. Plus also then having all the social media or having people comment on your life and saying horrible things as if they know you. And that can really cause people to feel this tremendous amount of isolation and shame and guilt and all kinds of feelings that it gets really, really complicated.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So true. Yeah.
I mean, that's how Vanderpump began, was this dynamic where everybody was a group of friends that all worked at this restaurant together. It's always been that. And then now, even though all of them don't work at the restaurant, I mean, James kind of does when he does his DJing, but even though they don't work at the restaurant, they're still that group of friends, and they've been that group of friends for a long time. I know some of them don't hang out as much when they're not filming, but they still are in contact with each other, and they're still going out and seeing each other, maybe just not as much as they do when they are filming, but it still happens. So yeah, there is going to be group dynamics and things like that. And it is going to have different responses from different people when different things are happening. So I can understand what the therapist is saying here, for sure. I just don't think it's a planned out group dynamic to have certain things. And things are heightened, yes, because they're on camera. And it's played out differently than maybe they would if there wasn't a camera. But that is how reality TV goes as well.
Definitely felt like your alliances in this friend group is what kept you safe. And it is kind of like this, I don't know, like, I don't want to say mob mentality, but it's definitely like we're here to voice our opinions on what you did and like bring that to the forefront. And so when you're at it alone, it just seems like you're not going to survive. And that's like part of the reason why I didn't go back, because I knew that I wouldn't be welcomed back, and it would put me in that position of feeling fight, flight, or freeze, like having that extreme response. And then once again, only having Tom as the person that I could confide in. And I could just see how bad of a situation that would be for me, especially as I'm trying to, put my mental health first and like have some sort of stability and sanity in my life now.
And I do think she is completely right with what she is saying. I do not know how she would have worked out in this group dynamic with now, betrayal of she betrayed all of those girls. And even if some of them do forgive her, they're always going to have that in the back of their mind that she slept with, one of our friends' boyfriends, and she could easily do that to me. That is something that I know that is something that they would have thought about. I mean, she has done this already. She betrayed all of their trust, not just Ariana. And I honestly cannot see how she would have fit in season 11 unless she was still with Tom. And I don't think that he is a good fit for her. And I do think that she needs to figure out some peace in her life and some stability. And maybe this is just not for her, but in the same sense, too, does she really need this to have in her life? I don't think she does. I do, though, think that there would be people that she could still bond with that would forgive her. Obviously, Schwartz, he's a very easy understanding person, and I could see him understanding like the situation and not wanting her to feel left out and things like that. And who knows? I mean, we will never know, and at this point I don't see a way that it would have worked if she came back. What do you guys think? If she came back, would she have friends, or who would she connect with? Let me know down below what you think. Let me know what you think. If she, like, would she have fit if she came back? I love to hear what you guys have to say, and I love getting to chat with you guys.
And I think what you're also speaking to, which is also such a relatable experience for a lot of people, is when you're in distress and you feel like you need support and you have a bond with someone, that it actually can create a codependency where the feelings get so heightened in the relationship because it's you versus other. It creates this polarity. So this bond that happens, and even there is kind of a further word where people use the word trauma bonding, which is when there is an abuse cycle that happens. I'm not saying that that was happening in this situation, but that's actually how that can easily happen in relationships where people are feeling like they're in such distress that they get bonded to people that are either unkind or abusive in certain regards, and it can be really dangerous. So your listeners, I think there are many people that have been through, unfortunately, situations like this, that you're really bringing the awareness of the need to sort of be able to take a step back, be more introspective, really thinking about what is my choice? What's my agency? What are my needs, wants, desires, and values? I call them your NWDVs because I like a little acronym. But what do you really want in your life? And how do you want to feel every single day? Because that's a choice that we can make every single day. But when we are in trauma or we're in distress or we're in high conflict situations, we can easily start to listen to voices of other people, especially if you feel like there's only one person. And then that voice starts to be kind of your voice, and it gets very confusing where you start and they end and vice versa. Does that make sense?
So confused. Yes. Yeah. So confusing. It gets so confusing because it was like, I couldn't even think for myself. I didn't know what I needed and what I wanted. And it felt so foggy. And as I was doing my trauma therapy and like distancing myself and following these boundaries that I was enforcing for myself, I could see more clearly, like I could literally feel this fog dissipating and like finally being able to think for myself. And so I don't take it lightly, like the situations that the show really puts people in. Like it is not an easy place to be.
And listen, I get it. I get that when she got herself into this situation by, then getting in the pool, having this connection, feeling something for Tom, and then like, oh my God, like having all of these feelings for him, and then get to the point where, okay, now we are going behind people's backs. We are, lying and we're manipulating just so we can see each other and keep doing this behind the scenes and all of that. I get she was probably listening to things that he was saying, probably like love bombing her, probably gaslighting her, all of those things, because I can see Tom doing that. I know that he's done this before. We've all seen it. So she was definitely infatuated with feeling a certain way and then having this person manipulate her and continue to lie and be deceitful and all of those things where she had never been like that before. And now this situation has become 7 months later and they're still in it, still doing the same thing. And it's a situation that, how long would it have gone until something happened, until somebody found out, until somebody saw? Maybe if it wasn't for Ariana picking the phone up that night, that they wouldn't have found out and he would have continued this. And it only would have gotten worse for her as well as everybody else. I just think she's putting a lot of weight in her decisions and blaming it on the show when it wasn't the show. And yes, they could, instigate things like, well, why don't you kiss Schwartz? Like, that whole thing. But ultimately, it's up to her to decide. And I don't think anybody pushed those two together, Sandoval and Rachel. They pushed themselves together. So when she sits there and blames the show for decisions that she made, it's like, no, that wasn't even part of the show. That was all happening behind everyone's back. Not when it was, and when it was airing, they were doing stuff to manipulate and see each other, and people had no idea. So there's some things that I can understand, and then there's some things I just think she's putting the blame onto something else and not realizing, like, this was my choice to do this, and these were the feelings that I had at that time. And yes, when feeling so infatuated and loved, like I never got loved like this before, I allowed him to manipulate me and say things and let me, continue this lie further and hide behind people's backs what we were doing and things like that. And I think that's where she needs to learn a little bit of accountability.
Yeah. And I think what you're speaking to, I think there's also a layer that, if this is helpful, is when you're learning a new skill, you don't have it because you have to build a new neural network in your brain to kind of operate in a different way. And so when you first start to learn something new, it may look really reactive or really kind of jarring to certain people because you're trying to learn the skill and you have to be really conscious. And then it's very kind of sudden or abrupt, or someone might say something that doesn't really come out quite smoothly or articulately, because the fact is they're still dysregulated, feeling unsafe, trying to kind of operate in a new way of being, which is so new. It's hard. And being conscious and aware of kind of creating those new neural networks is very hard work, but it's so worth it. And I can hear from earlier you speaking of just the work that you've done and really the importance that you're developing this relationship with yourself. And it sounds like even right now that you've been dating yourself and really getting to know who you are outside of a man or someone else. And that's a really empowering place for any woman or any person to really be in, to really like yourself and love yourself, because you're going to talk to yourself more than any other person in the entire planet for the rest of your life. You better really like who you're looking at in the mirror at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's so true.
And I agree. That is a great thing that she is doing. She's working on herself. She's getting to know herself. She's getting to love herself. And she's learning how to cope with different emotions that she never knew she had until maybe her relationship with James, or then even afterwards with Tom. She had to go through this period of time to further learn what she really wants in life and who she really wants to be. And that's not a bad thing. And I think even after her relationship with James, she should have took this time to do the same thing. And she just didn't know how to cope. And it led to that whole situation with Sandoval. And here we are today. She's finally learning how to cope and learning who she really wants to be, what she really wants. And that's all positive things. And it's sad that it came to this point, but I'm glad that she's here. We all make mistakes in life, and those mistakes are lessons to us to see what we need to do to go forward, to better our mistakes, and to learn from them to be a better person. And I think this is just the process of life for her and the direction that her life just went in.
Just to recap really quick, there's 3 points of the drama triangle: the victim, the rescuer or martyr, and the perpetrator or offender. And is it true you could be two things at the same time?
Absolutely. You can actually even be 3. You could cycle between various ones based on sort of what the need is within the dynamic. And again, this is a survival tactic that exists within groups to stay belonging and to survive. It's completely unconscious. People are not doing this intentionally out of malice. They're usually just doing it because they are feeling so distressed, or there's other aspects going on within the group that this is what they feel like it's life and death in order for them to be operating. But it is so common, and it is in everyday life that we sort of experiencing it. And the really important thing I want to note is the group doesn't have to stay in this. Not all groups, once they get into these triangulations, is always going to stay with these dynamics. The victim doesn't need to stay the victim. The perpetrator doesn't need to stay the perpetrator. The rescuer doesn't need to stay the rescuer. When people start to become aware of their patterning and the roles that they're playing, and they're consciously making different choices to set healthy boundaries, to correct those patterns, to articulate their feelings and emotions, to develop more sense of self, then we can start to create what's called like an empowerment dynamic, where it shifts from being that drama triangle to an empowerment where there's really a lot of healing that can happen within the group. And so that can really look like where the victim becomes the creator of their lives, where there's agency and control, where they feel that they are choosing the life that they want to live. The perpetrator could even be creating and be thought of as more of where there's a challenge and within the group dynamic, and that by them voicing their opinions and not being stuck on outcomes of their goals can really also shift that dynamic within the group. And then also the rescuer can be a coach rather than enabling the victim to not allow them to take agency of their life. So every group dynamic has the ability to heal. Every group dynamic has the ability to go work through conflicts and get on the other side of being healthier and happier. But it's a choice the group has to make when there's consciousness and awareness. And so you'll decide, I think that we'll all kind of wait to see whether or not you decide to go back to this group where there's an empowerment dynamic that's shifted based on the work that you've done. Because once one person changes within the group, or many do, the group can no longer exist as the way that it used to. And so that can be really exciting for a lot of people and hopeful, because we're never stagnant. We're always growing and changing and becoming new versions of ourselves, but we've got to choose that.
Yeah.
And I believe that we've seen this dynamic within the group change a couple different times where the drama triangle then became like an empowerment triangle. And I think this situation, yes, there's a lot of drama because of the betrayal, because of what happened, because of everything that was done. And I think with time, each person will move out of the drama triangle and into the empowerment triangle, where they will be a creator or a coach or a challenger, and they will be better friends for each other as well as better people for themselves and their families, because they're all starting to have families or starting to have a life with a partner, and it's something that dynamics change, especially through time, and we will see that it will get better. I don't see, though, how she would fit back into the equation, though it is possible. And I'd like to hear what you guys have to say. Do you think that Rachel could one day be friends with any of these people ever again? Let me know down below.
I love that so much. The victim becomes the creator, the offender becomes the challenger, letting go of the outcomes, and the rescuer becomes the coach. I think that is so empowering. And as I've been reflecting on my own role in this and knowing that like I'm starting my own podcast and I am kind of like dipping my toe back into the drama by commenting on what I'm seeing, and my purpose for doing that isn't to just like be in the drama necessarily. The purpose for me, like, identified myself as the rescuer in the way that I want to create a healthier environment for people watching reality TV. I want to be a part of creating ethical reality TV. And I think a part of that is educating people who are watching these shows about what we're actually consuming. And so I love how you said, like, the victim becomes the creator, because I feel like by doing this podcast, I have created something and I have a vision. And so, I'm taking action as a coach and educating. And this is obviously a challenge for me in so many different ways. And I'm not stuck on outcomes. I'm doing my part and I'm learning to let go, and whatever happens, happens. And there's such freedom in that.
I'm so excited for you. And I think the one advice I would give you is where we get stuck is with 60,000 thoughts every single day. 80% of them are negative and 95 are repetitive. So when we get into these habits and behaviors, we have to really be conscious. And the easiest and simplest way for us to make a conscious choice about becoming the creator of our lives or becoming the educator or helping people in a different way, understanding the importance of mental health and how we're actually showing up in order to have not only taking care of our physical bodies, but also our mental health as well, is by literally starting to focus on your heart and putting your hands on your heart and speaking from that place. I think it can either be a protector if you're feeling a little uncomfortable, or really reminding you that the heart beats before the brain. And so when you're actually operating from that place, you're never going to get it wrong, because you're speaking from truth, you're speaking from kindness, you're speaking from your authentic self and your voice. And that's just going to vibrate through everything that you do. And that's so exciting. And I'm so happy for you to see that unfold for you and this growth, because we have to remember, on the other side of trauma or suffering is always joy. And that's the journey that you're on right now. And I think you're taking everyone with you, which is really exciting.
Yeah, it is very exciting. Thank you for being a part of it as well.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And I'll be championing you and can't wait to see what you're doing. And if I can help you in any way, I know that I'm here.
Thank you, Susan.
And I do see growth in Rachel in the sense that she is taking over her life, in the sense she wants to be a better person. She's choosing to not be put into that drama mix that she was in, and reevaluating everything that she has to offer. Is she, in the sense, putting herself back into the drama by doing this podcast and talking about the situation or current events that are happening within the show? In that sense, I do think she is, but it's all about how you choose to respond, and how she chooses to respond to these upcoming episodes in this season, and what she chooses to do with that knowledge of what happens is going to be based on her. Now, I also think she's doing a good thing by having people come on her podcast, talking more about mental health, bringing more awareness to situations and different social elements like the drama triangle and the empowerment triangle and things like that. I think these are all positive things. We can only see her growth as she continues to go forward. And I do see a little bit of growth from her. I also do wish her all the best. I do feel like her responding to some of the things that she will have to respond to might not be the best, but it's all on how she responds, and we can only wait to see there. What do you guys think of these episodes? Do you like when the therapist comes on and explains different things within situations that have happened within her life and situations that also can relate to a lot of everyday life? I think that's a positive thing, and I hope you guys enjoy that as well. And what do you think about this episode? What do you think about her responses to the therapist? Let me know down below your thoughts and opinions, and we will see if she puts out Chapter 8 this week, since, the last couple of weeks she's been popping 2 out a week. So I said to one of my commenters today, I swear if she pops a 3rd episode out in a week, that I'm going to stop. I'm going to quit. I was kidding. But if she does 3 episodes this week, oh my God, I might cry just a little bit. But I love you all. I love doing this for you guys. And I hope that you all enjoy. And I hope you all have a wonderful day. And I will see you guys again very soon. The Vile podcast, I put on pause just for this, and it will be out soon as well. So stay tuned for that.
With the gritty on your arm once you cover up my bruises and battle scars, but it always ends the same. Can't bear the things I've had to face. Got you crying on your knees in pain. Oh, some things never change.